Rush Limbaugh on Friday. Go. About 20 minutes ago, I started having a hacky cough. I've got one of these little things in the bronchial tubes that's in the process here of being ejected by my bodily respiratory system. I got some of it right there. I didn't mean to do that on the air, but I didn't have time to hit the cough button. Well, the microphone was right here, but nothing. There was no projectile there. I've learned how to do this in polite company, but it's still, I should have hit the cough button and I didn't. At any rate, the audience here is growing geometric proportions, and each day we have people who've never listened before. And so you might be, what's Open Line Friday? What's the difference? Sometimes it doesn't sound any different, but the way it's different, Monday through Thursday, when you call and our expert call screeners determine your fitness to appear on this program with me, you have to be talking about things I care about, because if I get bored, then the audience will get bored. So can't have that. But on Friday, you don't have to talk about anything interesting to me. It can be anything. And if I'm bored, I'll either act it or fake it. But that's the big risk, because theoretically, Open Line Friday is turning over the all-important content to callers. Lovable, couldn't do without you callers, but nevertheless rank amateurs in professional broadcasting terms. But that's the fun of it. So the upshot is, whatever you want to talk about, it doesn't have to be political in nature. It doesn't even have to be anything in the news, whatever it is. Again, the number is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. We are, at the moment, tracking down the audio for this. And we will have it momentarily. We would have it now, except that I have a ban on all audio sound bites from PMSNBC. The only reason they have an audience is this program. We used to play sound bites from this crazy Looney Tune bunch all the time, and it created curiosity. People tuned in, and now their audience started growing. So I banned them. I just stopped using sound bites. Why plug these people? But there are occasions, like in every instance, where a ban must be temporarily set aside. Today is one of those occasions. Remember when Sarah Palin was reputed to have said, she never said it, but I wonder how many of you still to this day think she did. She said supposedly it was either in an interview with the perky one, Katie Couric, or with Charlie Gibson, that she could see Russia from her backyard in Alaska, and that qualified her to be president, because that means that it meant that she was knowledgeable in foreign affairs. She never said it. It was a Saturday Night Live joke that took on a life of its own. In fact, the last time of the 3 times that I have finished as one of the top 10 most fascinating people in the country, Barbara Walters, that show she does every December, the same year, what's her name? Tina Fey was also one of the top 10 most fascinating. You know why? For impersonating Sarah Palin. Why wasn't Sarah Palin one of the top 10? Why was an impersonator? And that's why she was there. I mean, Barbara Wawa said so. Well, Hillary Clinton was on PMSNBC last night with Rachel Maddow. Now, Hillary Clinton ran for president. Everybody thinks that she was going to win. She thought she should have won. She still thinks she should have won. She thought she was eminently, profoundly qualified, more so than anybody else. She has been First Lady. She has been in charge of bimbo eruptions for her husband, which meant, as a good feminist, it was her job to destroy any woman who had affairs with her husband, threatening to go public with it. And the feminazis all supported that. It was amazing. So she ran that unit, the bimbo eruptions. She became an expert at looking the other way when Bill was out with Jennifer Flowers and Monica Lewinsky. And then she was the architect of the failed Clinton health care program in the early 90s. That bombed out. Pretty much everything she did, Secretary of State, not much happened. Benghazi, we lost Libya. She lied about having to corkscrew down in a landing in Bosnia because they were avoiding sniper fire. Turned out none of it was true. She claimed that she was named after Sir Edmund Hillary, who climbed Mount Everest. The problem with that was that he didn't climb Mount Everest until 6 years after she was born. She could not have been named after Sir Edmund Hillary, but she told a crowd, she went, supposedly she told me she applied. She went and then she tried to join the Marines. She went to a recruiting office in downtown Chicago, and they looked at her. This is what she said. They looked at her and said, nope, we can't take you. Maybe the dogs will take you. Hillary, not knowing that that's an affectionate term for Army people, thought that they were calling her a dog. Wondered why she would think this. And made a big deal out of that. Does anybody really think Hillary Clinton wanted to join the Marines? Well, anyway, what I'm doing, I'm vamping here, folks, as a highly trained specialist. I'm hoping I get the audio. So it's not, I only found this 2 minutes before the program began. And so now Cookie is scurrying furiously. I didn't know when it happened to the program last, so she's got to scan the transcript and find when it happened and roll it off on tape, then put it off on MP3, then transfer it over to the New York Outgorth office, and then we have to send it up. So it's a long process to get an audio soundbite on the program. Let me just tell you what she said, and we get the bite. We will play it for you. During an interview last night in the Rachel Maddow Show, the failed 2016 presidential candidate who was said to have a 92% chance of winning on Election Day said, quote, the president, meaning the Trumpster, the president has basically insulted and attacked South Korea. South Korea is literally, you know. Hillary says you know a lot. For a professional politician and public speaker, she uses that phrase, you know, which is a crutch. We have, do I know how to vamp or do I know how to vamp? We've got the bite. All right, so set it up. How long is it? You have a time on 16 seconds. You have to listen fast. She's on Rachel Maddow last night. Failed 2016 presidential candidate. I don't know what the question was. It doesn't matter. Here is what Hillary Clinton said.
The president has basically insulted and attacked South Korea. South Korea is literally, within miles of the border with North Korea. They would be so at risk if something were done by Kim Jong-un.
Now, some of you may be scratching your heads. What's the big deal? And the reason I say that is because there's a poll out here. A recent poll conducted by our old buddy Kathleen Hall Jamieson at the University of Pennsylvania, the Annenberg Center. She loves me. Well, she used to. 4 out of 10 Americans cannot name a single First Amendment right. 4 out of 10. A shocking 60% do not know the 3 branches of government. I saw this last night and said, what am I doing here? 40% of the American people, in a big survey, they released this a couple of days ago. 4 out of 10 Americans. Now, I don't know what the sample was. It's actually 48%. It's almost 5 out of 48%. I'm sorry, only 48% could name one. 40% of Americans could not name any of the First Amendment rights, any of the rights spelled on the First Amendment. Kathleen Hall Jamieson, even in the story, says this is a problem. We need to fix our education. These results emphasize the need for high-quality civics education in the schools and for press reporting that underscores the exactly. Wonder why the Constitution isn't being taught. I remember we were taught the Bill of Rights as a separate entity from the Constitution when I was growing up, and it was early on. It was like first or second grade. It's obviously not being taught. You and I know this. Public education has just gone to hell. The problem is it's purposeful. This is a desired result here, the dumbing down of the American people. These people vote. 40%. So I don't know how many people understand how stupid Hillary Clinton's comment was. So I'm going to play it again. And if you didn't get it the first time, well, what's wrong with that? Sounded fine to me. Listen one more time.
The president has basically insulted and attacked South Korea. South Korea is literally, within miles of the border with North Korea. They would be so at risk if something were done by Kim Jong-un.
Now remember, Sarah Palin didn't say that she could see Russia from her backyard in Alaska, and they said, that's dumb, that's stupid, she's an idiot, that's crazy, she's not qualified. But she never said it. Tina Fey did. Hillary did say this. I'm still seeing some blank faces here on the other side of glass, folks, and if I'm seeing blank faces here, I can imagine there's still some out there. One more time, for those of you who are still not quite seeing what the big deal is here. One more time.
The president has basically insulted and attacked South Korea. South Korea is literally, within miles of the border with North Korea. They would be so at risk if something were done by Kim Jong-un.
All right. This is really, because this woman is purportedly the smartest woman in the world, the smartest woman in America, eminently qualified to be president. The border of South Korea is not within miles of the border of North Korea. South Korea is the border. North Korea and South Korea are on the same peninsula. There's just a line drawn there on a map. There is something called a demilitarized zone. It's a drawn boundary where there are no armaments and no military combat conflict supposed to happen. And I'm going to give her the benefit. Maybe she's thinking of the DMZ here, but that's South Korea and North Korea are the same land. Piece of just a line. They border each other. It's not. South Korea is not within miles. South Korea is the border. North Korea is the border. Nobody corrected her. There's nobody in the media other than me pointing this out and laughing at it and having a good time and making sure that everybody understands it. Anyway, good work up there in New York, tracking down the soundbite very quickly. A couple more things here before we go to the break. Back on August 7th, remember when Google fired the guy because he wrote this manifesto saying that Google is discriminatory internally against conservatives? James Damore was his name. And he had said some things in I forget exactly what, but female Google employees ended up being involved in this. And I suggested that whatever was said, rather than get mad, don't just go huffing and puffing and so join some protest. I said, sue them. I mean, Google's rolling in my head. This is what I said. Google is reeling. This is the kind of thing, this is the kind of charge that just sends leftists up the tree, that they're unfair, that they discriminate on the basis of gender. Ladies, tell Google to prove it to you that the guy who wrote the memo is wrong. What you say to Google is, show me the money. Go for the money. Tell them you want money. Tell them you want raises. Tell Google to prove it. Don't join the protest march and start throwing underwears and bras. Just demand money. They're reeling right now. Hit them. This guy had made some charge against Google that it was predominantly male and that women employees were not on the same fast-track advancement path and so forth. And I knew what was going to happen. The women of Google and everybody else would get mad and start joining the protest march and doing that. I said, no, go for the money. Well, guess what? Guess what, folks? This morning, CBS This Morning, Gayle King spoke with Wired magazine editor-in-chief Nicholas Thompson. about a class action lawsuit against Google filed by 3 former employees alleging the company discriminated against women in pay and promotions.
There are accusations of gender pay discrimination. There are accusations of sexual harassment. There are general accusations that it is very hard to be a woman in Silicon Valley, so it's a big, big deal.
Yes.
This particular lawsuit itself is also a big deal. Covers all women who worked at Google over the last 4 years, so if Google loses, that's a big payout. Even if they don't lose and it settles, it's going to be a continuing public perception problem for Google and may make it harder for them to attract and retain qualified women who they certainly need.
Am I going to get any credit for inspiring this idea? Am I going to get any credit for being on the side of the women who do this? Am I going to get any credit for suggesting this course of action? No. That's why I played the audio soundbite, so that you would know that I was at the forefront of this. And therefore, next time you hear that I'm anti-female, anti-woman, or whatever, you remember this. Because you know it's not true anyway, but I mean, you remember this as evidence that you can pass on to others. Let's take a brief break. We are underway here on Open Line Friday, and we'll continue after this. Now, yesterday on the program, the primary topic was Trump and his maybe deal with Chuck and Nancy on allowing the Dreamers to stay in the United States. There is a lot more on that since yesterday, but I don't want to spend the whole program on it, but like we did for most of yesterday, but we do have additional information and some other thoughts. One of the things I saw that I must admit, it got me. Mickey Kaus, who is not known as a conservative, but he has his moments, made almost a casual throwaway observation, and I had never thought of it this way. But what's your reaction when you hear there is no country in the world that permits children from foreign countries to legally become citizens after illegally coming to the country? Not a single country in the world. And yet that's what we're talking about. I don't know how many of these DACA people or Dreamers are actual kids. That's another. I'm not really sure exactly who these people are. We're told it's a number of 800,000. But stop and think of that. Because if that's all it took, all you had to do was come here as a child or anywhere else, and you're automatically a citizen because you're a child. Stop. That'd be the end of it. That would be the end of any immigration policy. That's why no country permits it. And yet we are on the verge here of perhaps doing it. Back in just a moment. And many people know that I am an Apple aficionado on their tech stuff, not their politics, and that I am an expert. And so I got people left and right asking, when is this iPhone 10 going to be available? Because you know, the iPhone 8 Plus, they went on pre-order last night at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern. But the iPhone 10, which is the state-of-the-art all-screen, and by the way, I don't care about the notch. Tech bloggers are going nuts about the notch. I couldn't care less. The phone overall is too small for me. It's not much bigger than iPhone 7 or iPhone 8 or iPhone 6. That's tiny for me. I don't care if it is all screen. It's not as big as the Plus screens because it's not as wide, but it's all personal preference. Anyway, the iPhone 10 is not going to go on order until October 27th, and it's not going to supposedly start shipping until November 3rd. So people have been asking me, are you going to get one? Well, yes, of course, but I'm not. This is the first year that I'm not dying to have it. I mean, it's not. But people have been asking, why are they waiting? I said, well, there's a bunch of things. Let me cut to the chase on this. I have told people, I have a couple guys in Phoenix who think I hung the moon. They whatever I say. So they ask me every time there's Apple News, what do you think? What do you think? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I said, I'll get an iPhone 10, and it'll probably deliver next May. You're kidding. No, I'm not kidding. I think this thing's going to be back-ordered practically until the iPhone 10-2 comes out. Really? Yes, I do. Why do you think that? For a whole bunch of reasons. They have to sell the iPhone 8 as well, folks. one reason the iPhone 10's delayed, there are other legitimate reasons for it, too. It's a state of the art. The technology, they can't mass produce it and they can't make enough of it because it's that advanced. Right, they can only make 10,000 of these things a week, or 10,000 a day is what it is. It's 300,000 a month. That's not going to get close. Not even going to get close. They sell 10 iPhones a second, and they're making 300,000 a month. There's no way. And I don't know how they're going to speed up production of this because it's all depending on the parts that they have to get to assemble them. The biggest part is the big full screen, the OLED screen. They're having trouble manufacturing it because of Apple's stringent requirements for the screen. I really think it's going to be back ordered all the way through at least March of next year, and maybe even longer. By back ordered, I mean you ordered it, it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks till you get it, or maybe even longer. And I think some of that is legit, and the other reason for it is to make sure that they sell some of the iPhone 8. See, next year they're going to come out with the bigger version of the iPhone 10, the iPhone 10 Plus. It'll have a 6.5-inch screen, and people like me will really want that one. And then they won't be selling the Plus iPhone anymore because they won't need to. This is a year they still need to sell that phone, and it will be much more widely available than this new one. And so I think it's strategic, and it's also related to supply. But I think this is going to be back ordered for many, many moons. Now back to Donald Trump and Chuck and Nancy and the Dreamers. In addition to who are they, we also have some new information today from a Morning Consult poll. Now, yesterday we took quite a few calls. Not nearly enough to base anything scientific on it. It's nothing more than anecdotal. Every caller that we took on this is an ardent Trumpist, totally loyal Trumpist. We didn't take a single call from a Trump voter who was in any way upset that Trump is reaching out to Chuck and Nancy. And we didn't take a call from a single Trump voter who was upset that Trump may participate in letting the Dreamer kids, whoever they are, stay here. You know, Pelosi saying, we want a full path to citizenship, and we're not going to fund the wall. And Trump says, well, we're not going to do anything if we don't fund the wall. We'll fund the wall when I want to fund the wall, but it's going to get paid for, and we're going to do it, so forth. And we're not talking amnesty. Trump says we're not talking amnesty, but I don't want to kick them out. They're kids. I don't want to kick the kids out. And then Mickey Kaus with a great point. There's not a single country in the world that does what we're about to do here. Not a single country that has immigration law or immigration policy exempts children and lets them stay and become citizens just because they're children. Not a single country does. So the Morning Consult poll, remember Steve King yesterday, congressman from Iowa. Steve King said, and he was joined by a number of otherwise famous Trumpists and Trump voters, who said if Trump does this deal with Chuck and Nancy, if there's anything approaching amnesty for DACA or the Dreamer kids, he's going to lose his base. That's it. It'll be over. And a lot of people thought that. And you can't blame him. Immigration and Trump's position on it is the number one position why he got elected, number one issue. So Morning Consult had a poll, released a poll yesterday. And among people who voted for Trump, 67% of them support citizenship or permanent residency. 67% of the people who voted for Trump are perfectly fine with the deal. Perfectly fine with either the DACA kids, whoever they are, the Dreamers. We're talking 800,000 people, and everybody thinks they're kids, so we'll go with that. 67% of Trump voters think fine and dandy. They can become citizens or We don't care if they don't become citizens, but we'll let them stay. They can become residents. 20% say what Steve King said. 20% said, if this happens, we're out of here. If this happens, Trump has betrayed us. Morning Consult poll. Another 12% say they don't know. They're still trying to figure out one of the freedoms mentioned in the First Amendment. They didn't want to be bothered with asking whether or not the Dreamer kids could stay because they haven't got past trying to figure out at least one freedom in the First Amendment. Now, so far, I mean, Trump is seen as part of the deal and digging it and liking working with Chuck and Nancy. Now, there's another aspect of this that has reared its head in terms of analysis. And it's about tax reform and what is possibly on the table with this. The headline for this: House Senate tax proposals likely to diverge. Committees to put together details of their own tax overhaul bills after blueprint released on the week of September 25th. It's a Wall Street Journal story. The House and Senate versions of a plan to overhaul the nation's tax code are likely to diverge on many issues, including a treatment of business interest expenses and their write-offs for investments. So let's look at this. In the past week, the odds of tax reform or tax cuts or tax overhaul are getting better. Both the House and Senate are talking about it. Trump is talking about it. Then over here, we got Trump dealing with Chuck and Nancy. And everybody appears to be hunky-dory and happy. I mean, Chuck's happy with it. Nancy's happy with it. Trump seems happy with it. Not all of Trump's voters are happy with it, but apparently 67% fine and dandy with whatever Trump does here. And that's what our caller said yesterday. They trust Trump. If Trump's doing this, then there is a long-range reason that we don't know yet. They have total implicit trust, the people that called here. And again, can't make a scientific projection on how many people that is, and I'm not attempting to do so. Now, the stock market's continuing to percolate out there, even though there are warnings that it's going to have the bottom fall out. I mean, that happens anytime the market's chugging along. You've always got people who want to ramp up subscriptions to their financial newsletters. And the way you ramp up subscriptions to a financial newsletter is predict a crash. It's axiomatic. I mean, when you stop and think of it, how much is really real out there versus how much are people doing to create impressions, cause certain actions, like in selling subscription. We do not do this here at the EIB network. We don't create we don't create panic in order to sell anything here. In fact, we leave it up to you whether or not we don't even promote it all that much. But other people live and die by this stuff, psychological motivation or what have you. But overall, the markets are continuing to percolate despite these warnings out there that the bottom's going to drop out. And even with the North Korean crisis out there, the markets are still continuing to percolate up. The drive-bys are not talking about it. The drive-bys are not putting two and two together and getting four. You've got a lot of things happening here. You've got the hurricanes and the damage. By the way, almost all the power is not quite, but the power restoration in Florida is so far ahead of schedule. It is amazing. And that's why you're not seeing that story in the news either. But believe me, the power restoration of Florida is way ahead of schedule. So the drive-bys are missing the market going up. They're missing the connection between this story, House Senate tax proposals likely to diverge, North Korea. I mean, the little potbelly dictator launched another missile, over Japan. The markets continue to go up. And I think there's a reason for this in the political arena. And I think you can't ignore the impact that Trump's leaning over and talking to Chuck and Nancy is having on the process. Because remember now, folks, a lot of these establishment types, they orgasm over this. The two parties getting together and talking, oh, that means Washington is working. Yes, let's throw a party. Doesn't matter what Washington does. It's just there's governing going on. They're actually talking. And I think within this realm that we're talking about, that creates a positive attitude. And you could say, let's take these people that called yesterday who said that Trump may be 2 or 3 steps ahead of all of us, and you just don't know it because the image is Trump is a bumpkin and he's out of place and doesn't know what's going on. What if Trump behaving nice with Chuck and Nancy is actually about furthering along the prospects of tax reform? What if it's about something else entirely? Now, the Trump critics say he's not that smart. The guy's an egomaniac. The only reason he's getting together with Chuck and Nancy is because the New York Times is praising him, and he wants to be praised. He wants to be loved. Trump supporters think this guy is strategic, part of the deal. He's way ahead of us. So it may well be that the convergence here on tax reform is a direct result of Trump talking to Chuck and Nancy and the ice being broken. Gridlock, per se, in Washington. Think about it. Take a break. We'll be back and continue right after this. Always strive to take phone calls in the first hour of the program. And today we're going to start in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is George, and I am glad you called. Thank you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rush. It's great to talk to you once again.
Thank you.
I think it's really disingenuous for everyone in the media to keep saying that Ben Shapiro cost the University of Berkeley $600,000. Antifa cost.
Wait. Whoa. It was $1.5 million, I heard, total, total expenditure for security for his speech.
No, see, but Ben Shapiro didn't cost them a nickel. Antifa cost them that money.
Right.
The security wasn't there to protect the people from Ben Shapiro hurting anyone. The security was there because Antifa was going to cause violence. So why don't they put the blame where it goes? Why can't they put the blame on the people that are causing trouble instead of on an honest guy trying to give an honest speech about his position?
Because they think Antifa is justified. They think a conservative showing up at Berkeley needs to be shown his place. We don't want you here, they say. I mean, Antifa, doesn't matter where you go. There was a rally in San Francisco. There's been a rally in Boston. The Antifa people are saying, we don't care what your opinion is. We don't want to talk to you. You are not. You are not real to us. We don't care. And so the media is always going to be on the side of Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, whatever. And that's why. Here's, if you're not up to speed on this, and most of you probably are, Ben Shapiro, 33 years old, is a brilliant young man, brilliant conservative. He is a Harvard graduate, but he is a thoroughbred conservative and can explain it. He runs and edits a website called The Daily Wire, and he tries to take his message to the belly of the beast. He goes to liberal enclaves to make speeches. So he was scheduled to go to the University of California at Berkeley, interestingly enough, the home of the free speech movement back in the 1960s. And it was a multiple-week brouhaha to determine whether or not the cops would go into gear to protect him, whether or not the university would. None of those were givens. He decided to go anyway, and the media is portraying him as the problem for daring to go where he's not wanted and where he won't be listened to. And it's just, it's seen as Shapiro showing up to unnecessarily provoke a bunch of college snowflakes who don't want to be hurt or damaged or injured by a message that they've never heard before, which is conservatism. I think Shapiro needs to be applauded for this. treating the guy, as he said, like Godzilla. He's about 5'7", and he doesn't weigh as much as one of Godzilla's fingers. And at 33% can't tell you even one of the branches of government. They think it's Republican, Democrat, Independent. Readings of... I'm not kidding, folks. The drive-bys are dumbing people down, and the education system is just... I mean, this confirms it for me, but it didn't need confirmation. Anyway, we're here, Open Line Friday. Talk about whatever you want. 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Here's another one. This is from the UK Independent newspaper, but it's about American students. Are you ready for this? Nearly 50%, almost half of American millennials are between 18 and 34, basically. Might be 17 and 33, 19 and 35, but it's within that range. Nearly half of American millennials would give up the right to vote to wipe out their student loans. Student debt has soared to a staggering high of $1.33 trillion, according to the Department of Education. Who runs that program, by the way? That would be, who took over that program? Barack Hussein Obama took over that program. It was a private sector enterprise. The government took it over. Now the government runs the student loan program. $1.33 trillion. This means that many graduates spend how many years after school just paying off their loan rather than getting ahead? What does that do to I've mentioned this before. This is one of the biggest bugaboos I've got. This culture, our society, for the longest time has been preaching college education, college education, college education. You don't have a prayer. You don't stand a chance. You're nothing if you don't have a college education. And everybody believes it. Every mom and dad, it's their dream that their kids be able to go to college. It's the focal point of a young person's life, as far as their parents are concerned, getting them into college. Anywhere, junior college, major college, prestigious college, getting them into college, saving for it, finding a way to get them a scholarship. It's a focal point because everybody wants their kids to do well, and everybody wants their kids to do better than they did. Everybody wants the best for their kids. It's entirely natural, and it's the way it should be. And part of it, what has been drilled into people's heads, is the only way you can get there is with a college education. Now, the roots of this are the Great Depression, because back then it was true. The Great Depression, it was the formative experience in my mom and dad's lives, that and World War II. Well, actually, there are three things. Then the Khrushchev promising to kill and bury their grandchildren. But living through the Depression, the only way, the only people, and not everybody in this group, the only people that had a chance were those with an education. And a college education doesn't mean you know anything, but you get a piece of paper saying that you do. You get a piece of paper saying that you have undergone the rigors and the disciplines to become a college graduate. College degree is one of the ways that companies use to just limit the number of applicants for a job. Got to have a degree, you can't work here. That gets rid of how many applicants you don't have to interview or talk to. But in many cases, it's a relevant requirement at the same time. My point is that for the longest time, for I don't know how many generations, at least since the Great Depression, this has been a fundamental objective of all parents, the education of their kids, and going to college and graduating. Fine, okay? Now, who has been running this program? Well, our betters. Academe is filled with a bunch of pointy-head intellectuals who think they're smarter than everybody else. The people that push academe, much the same attitude. It's the intellectual superiority, the uniqueness of us who are educated. It just push everybody to it. And so people will do whatever it takes to get there. Now, my point is the people who have been encouraging this, and I don't doubt at some point in the past it was all genuine and the motivation was pure and the belief was sincere. But now, sending people to college, making sure, it's just the same as making sure people go to the movie theater. The colleges are citadels of liberalism. The professors there need to be paid so that they can continue to inculcate and promulgate and propagate and propagandize the students. And that's why you never, whenever you hear about major businesses price gouging, big oil, big labor, big box retail, big pharma, you never, ever hear anybody complaining about big education. But they're in there. They never cut tuition. They never lower their prices. They never accommodate for market circumstances. You pay it or you don't get in. You find a way to pay it or the heck with you. And nobody puts pressure on them and nobody shames them. And people do it because they've been told that the only way their kids or they are going to have a prayer of mattering and succeeding is if they go to college. Now look what they've done to it. Same people behind this and the people running the student loan program and all of these education advocates. And you can't turn on the television today. You can't watch a cable news show without some guest or some analyst complaining about education in America. It's just routine. It's a common subject. Now, the specifics are not of interest to me right now. My point is it's a subject that's constantly out there. It's a must. It's a requirement. Now, look what they've done. $1.33 trillion in student loan debt. This means that all of these graduates are not all of them. Some of them are affluent and their parents can afford it or have other scholarships or what have you. But the people have accrued this debt because there is pressure to go to college. I should add, I think there are a lot of people in college that have no business being there. They may know what they want to do, but they're discouraged from that. No, you have to go to college. It's the only way, little Johnny, you can ever get ahead. I think universities are filled with people that really have no business being there. It's not made for everybody, but it's promoted as something that everybody must do. Well, you can't go there now without incurring a lot of debt. What's the value of a college education? What have they done to it? You come out of college and you have a debt of $40,000 or more. How long are you going to have to work at whatever you got your degree in just to pay off that loan before you even start making progress on your standard of living, on your prosperity? The very thing a college degree is supposed to get you. Advantages in the job market, advantages in compensation. You're going to be at the upper end of all of these scales if you go to college. And then you come out and you have all this debt. And it's even worse if you are a graduate student and you go to law school or you become a doctor of some kind. Look at the debt those people incur. Look at how many years they're paying off that debt before they even get to use their degree for the actual intended purpose, among many others, which is an increased standard of living and prosperity for their own families. And I think it's a mean, I wouldn't call it a trick. I'm not saying anybody purposely did this. I'm just saying that there's been a lot of people think they're better than everybody else and all that, and they're really basically incompetents. And they've destroyed this program like they've destroyed a lot of things that bureaucracies touch. And now you get to the point that half of American millennials would give up their right to vote to wipe out their student loans. Half of all millennials in the United States would give up their right to vote in order to get rid of their student loan. New research has found. We're going to choose to believe this. I know it's a polling company and it's iffy, but I'm going to acknowledge it could be all wet, but I'm going to take the opportunity here to choose to believe this because it facilitates in making a point. Student debt has soared now $1.33 trillion, according to the government, the Department of Education, leaving millions of Americans struggling under the burden of repayments. According to a new survey from personal finance website Credible, 50% of 18 to 34-year-olds questioned in America said they would sacrifice their vote at the next 2 presidential elections in order to wipe out their student debt. Now, it's not hard to see what might happen here. I mean, the Democrats are already talking about tuition-free college, right? Tuition-free college, there won't be any debt, not for the students. Crazy Bernie is out. He's the Democrat frontrunner. He's running on socialized medicine. And you know what? Crazy Bernie will admit that the cost for his health care plan is $32 trillion. Do you know what the national debt is from the beginning of the founding of the country to today? $20 trillion. Crazy Bernie admits that his health care plan will cost $32. We don't have it. But it doesn't matter to Crazy Bernie. He's still out there proposing it and pushing it. And he's serious. So, I tell you what I expected Hillary to do. I was wrong about something. I'm going to own up to it. I fully expected Hillary or Obama during the 2016 campaign to promise the forgiveness of student loan debt as a sort of like an October surprise or some late-breaking campaign promise in order to get the votes and get the turnout of the millennial voter. And I still think somebody's going to do it down the road because of this. You know, Chuck and Nancy. You know, they need a name like Brangelina and Kimye. What would it be? Shulosi? Nanchuk? Whatever. They're going to come up with an idea. Chancey, come up with an idea. Vote for us, and you can get your student loan forgiven. It's gonna happen, folks. This is a lot of money, and the Democrats don't care how much they spend, and maybe the Republicans don't either. We don't have any of the money we're spending now, over $3 trillion a year. That's what the tax take is. Anything over that, we don't have it. We're borrowing it, racking up the national debt deficits. But somebody's going to come along and propose this. They already are in the form of free tuition. But, you know, as I pointed out this political story earlier in the week, the free tuition thing is not selling among liberals. And you know why? Because of this student loan debt. Oh, wait a minute. Now you're going to give it away after we have all this debt? Screw you, Democrats, is what the action is on that. It's backfiring on them. And so will this free income business that the tech guys are proposing because they want to put robots everywhere, including in your bedroom. Did you know that? Sex robots. So they think there aren't going to be any jobs because there are going to be robots everywhere, and we're still going to need to keep people from marching in the streets and burning down our estates. And so we think the government should give everybody a guaranteed national income. That's what Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, Stephen Hawking, the rest of these wizards of smart are all suggesting that. So everybody's talking about giving money away. Meanwhile, the student loan people are not being given anything, and they're offering their right to vote in the next 2 presidential elections. Now, given millennials don't vote Republican, maybe Trump said, you know, you're on. You're on. Throw something else in the deal. Anyway, it's a staggering statistic, and it's a telltale sign of what's really going on in the minds of people that you don't know about because it never makes the news media. Okay, let me take a brief time out because we've run up against it here. We'll be back after this. There is this little reference to college education. It's in the 18th paragraph of the story, so you wouldn't have seen it. Nobody reads that far. They don't even know what the First Amendment is or where it is. When Democrats go and talk to working class voters, we think talking to them about how we can help their kids go to college, have a better life, we think that's great, said Allie Lapp, executive director of the House Majority PAC, which supports Democrat House candidates. But these working class voters are not interested. It's a problem when you have a growing bloc in the electorate that think college is not good and they actually disdain people that go to college. Now, there's probably a little amplification of these, but this is the Democrats think that these are hayseeds, these are hicks to the Democrats. working class voters that Obama decided not to appeal to back in 2011. The Democrats want them back. They're going out and talking to them, and the Democrats saying, look, we're the party that can help your kid get to college. We're the party that can help your kid help you afford college and have a better life. And they're finding working class people who think it's not good, that college is overblown, and they have a disdain for people that have gone to college. I can understand that. But I want to get obviously a lot to explain there and unpack, but let me grab a call. Cornwell on Hudson, New York. This is Jim. Welcome, sir. Great to have you.
Hello, Rush. This is a real thrill for me. I'm a long time listener. Over 25 years, I've been a Rushaholic.
Wow.
And whenever I get discouraged, I always turn you on, and by the time 15 minutes goes by, I'm feeling pretty good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, sir.
Well, I want to thank you. What I'm calling about is something that kind of goes along with what you were saying earlier about Hillary. She's got this book tour going on now, and a week ago, in the midst of the rising rush about the hurricane, they were on CBS Evening News last week, and then again with Jane Pauley. They kept going over this one part about her calling Donald Trump a creep, because he was lurking around behind her, stalking her. And they showed these pictures of him standing behind her with a smirk on his face and saying how he was invading her space. She also said, maybe I would have gotten elected if I turned around and said, get out of my space, you creep. At any rate, I watched that second debate in St. Louis, and I remember the talking heads the next day talking about this lurking, and I didn't remember it from watching it. So when I heard it again last week, I actually brought up the YouTube video of that entire 90-minute debate. And not only did Trump never during those 90 minutes go over to her space, except once to shake her hand at the end, she actually invaded his space 4 times in a row. Within 30 minutes, she walked from her podium 15 feet across the stage, right between him and his podium after he answered his question, stood there for the entire 2 minutes, gave her answer, walked back, did it 4 times in a row.
Yeah, you know what that is? You're exactly right. What this is, she is saying that because she still finds it necessary to appeal to aggrieved women who have been taught that every man is a predator and not to be trusted. She's lying about it just to relate to people again. That's exactly what she does. On the left coast, where anything we need is within 3 blocks. Anything. It's Open Line Friday. Telephone number 800-282-2882. Back to the phones. George in Ottawa, Ontario, in Canada. Great to have you here, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Limbaugh. I'm great. What a pleasure and a true honor to speak to you today.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Now that the Republicans control all 3 branches of government, my question is really simple. Why is it that when organizations have sued the Justice Department and State Department, I'm of course speaking of Judicial Watch here, for documents related to Hillary Clinton, Benghazi, and everything else, why is it that those 2, especially State and Justice, are so slow in releasing the documents that the judges have ordered them to be released? And if it is the deep state that you talk about, then why isn't Secretary Tillerson and Attorney General Sessions getting in there and kicking some tail to get this information out?
Well, in fact, and that's an excellent question. There are a lot of factors here. Number one is that there are still a lot of Obama holdovers in both places, State Department and the Department of Justice. Trump hasn't even, I don't want to say gotten close, but there are still a lot of appointed positions in various departments in the cabinet that Trump has not filled yet. And when asked about it, he said, well, we may not, because we believe in smaller government, and this is part of the way we're going to do it. Tillerson is whacking a bunch of weeds out of the State Department, but you've got generations of career people there, generations of lowest learners, babe at the IRS, generations of people like Koskinen, the guy who runs the IRS, and they're invisible and they're there. You never know their names, but this is when they pop up. Sessions, poor Jeff Sessions. You know, Jeff Sessions is in a unique position all by himself. His objective, he's got the job he's dreamed of having. He's wanted to run the Department of Justice, be Attorney General, law enforcement head honcho for this country, or a prominent judgeship for a long time. And he signed on to the Trump campaign because Trump's out there saying we're going to build a wall. We're not going to let illegals in anymore. We're going to get serious about kicking them out and putting them back in line, coming in here legally and so forth. And he signed up. He signed up early. He was the first member of the U.S. Senate to endorse Trump, become part of his team. And now poor Jeff Sessions is in there wondering what the hell's going to happen in his dream business. I mean, Sessions went out and announced that we are going to start enforcing immigration policy. It wasn't long after that Trump went out and undercut it by announcing a deal with Chuck and Nancy. So Sessions wants to uphold U.S. law. He wants even stricter law when it comes to immigration. He believes that illegal immigration is destroying our culture, not just our economy, but it's destroying the basic foundation and identity of the country, illegal immigration. And he wants to clamp down on it. He is focused on that, but I'm telling you, the Department of Justice still has a lot of Clinton people in there, and they're in there for this exact reason. These people, they go to Ivy League schools or wherever, and they are trained, and this is their purpose. They grow up. They are raised. And then they are educated to become part of government, to advance a particular political point of view. And that's what they do. And they don't think twice about it. And it would be impossible to root all of them out in this amount of time if it were even an objective. And I don't think that it is. But a great example of what you're talking about is somebody went to the FBI. Might have been Judicial Watch or some special interest group, and made a Freedom of Information Act request for more Hillary Clinton emails. And the FBI said, no, we don't think anybody cares. There's not a valid public interest, so we're not going to make them available. Not a valid public interest. She had an illegal server. She almost could have been charged with felonious criminal behavior in this. And they're saying there's not a big public. Trump and his people are focused and occupied on other things. But I agree with you. It's a frustrating thing because it boils down to what's the purpose of winning? What do you go to the trouble of winning for if you're not going to grasp the things that you can take control of and reshape them and get them moving in the directions that you believe? I understand this. I think it also boils down to something else, in an intrinsic difference in liberals and conservatives. Liberals, Democrats believe in big, active, daily, expanding in every walk of life government, and conservatives don't. I have yet to meet somebody that's genuinely conservative who wants to become a bureaucrat, who wants to become an invisible person working in the government, advancing the conservative. They don't. They want to work in the private sector. Government is not a focus of their life. It is for people on the left. And over all this time, there are career people in every bureaucracy in the tens of thousands. Weeding them out, can't fire all of them. Weeding them out would be a specific project unto itself. And it, I know, it frustrates a lot of people. People ask me a lot about it frequently. Let's see. Jennifer's next. She is in Minnesota. Jennifer, great to have you. Thank you for calling and waiting.
Hi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking my call.
You bet.
I just wanted to say I am one of those people. I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm one of those people that when you comment that there's a possibility that your loans could be forgiven, my ears start to perk up, and I go, that is looking at people like me, because I was pushed into going to college because that was the be-all, end-all. And it didn't matter what degree you had. It didn't matter where you went to school. It just mattered that you went.
Right.
And so I did that, and it didn't do me any good at all. And here I sit with $100,000 in loans, and yeah, I can totally understand the appeal. So it goes even further back than the millennials. For as many issues as they've got, we've certainly got ours in Gen X too, and I'm one of those people.
So no, I didn't quite understand. You would get mad if other people's student loans are forgiven, or if tuition was made free. Is that what you said?
I wouldn't get mad. I would totally understand. I understand the appeal of that.
You'd want in on it.
I don't like it, and I feel bad for even feeling that way, but I totally would want in on that.
Oh, okay. Well,
I feel like if those people get their little bit, I could get my little bit too.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people don't think it's going to work that way. That if free tuition all of a sudden becomes a campaign promise or a government policy, people who have not been given free tuition and have all these student loans say, wait a minute, what about us? Because nobody's talking about forgiving student loans yet. They're only talking about making tuition going forward free. But somebody's going to. You can make book on it. It's getting to be like health care. Nobody can afford it, so what do? Well, have a government program where it's free. Same thing's going to happen. Of course, it isn't. But same thing's going to happen in education. It's getting unaffordable. You can't do it without incurring a lifetime amount of debt. So we'll have a education insurance program or some such. You can make book on it. This is it's a made-to-order issue for certain kinds of politicians. Anyway, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Brief break coming up, an obscene profit timeout, and we will be right back after this. And I've made no secret of the fact over the many years of service to humanity on this program that I am a college dropout. I dropped out in my second semester the first year. I didn't want to go in the first place, but I am. You know how you watch a sports event and the star of the game, very happy, celebratory, makes reference to the fact that he's the first in his family to go to college. I'm the first in mine that didn't. And I may be the only to this day to not graduate. And I knew what I wanted to do when I was age 8, and I looked at all of those requirements as roadblocks. I was impatient. I was eager. I wanted to get to it. I wanted to get in and get it. And my second semester, everybody told me in high school, when you get to college, you're on your own. Yeah, don't call roll and all that. You show up or don't show up. They don't care. But when it comes time to take tests, you better pass it. Well, I found it just the opposite. They did take roll, and they treated us much more like kids in college than they did in high school. But then when I saw a required physical education course was ballroom dance, and it was taught by a former drill sergeant in the Women's Army Corps, I said, well, and I cut it. I didn't go. And the college knew I wasn't. They called my mom and dad. Do you know that your son is skipping out on ballroom dance? Of course, they were humiliated. I mean, to have a college call the parents and say the son is skipping out. So my mom, they took my car away from me, and she drove me like a junior high school student to ballroom dance. And I hadn't gone to it in 6 weeks. In the first class I walk into, they're 6 weeks ahead of me, and everybody's dancing, and nobody paid me. I just stood there in the middle of the room, everybody's dancing around me. And I said, what am I doing here? But anyway, people know this and have been listening a long time, so I got this email. Do you regret it? You said you've never. Is there anything that not having a college degree has prevented you from doing? And you know there is. There's lots of things. Now, arguably, not having a degree has not been a negative in terms of my success, however you define it. So I can't, I'm not going to advocate people not go to college. I do believe it's not for everybody. And if you don't know what you want to do by the time you get there, it's probably a good place to go park for a while because you will learn some things. And I'm not against education at all. I am all for education. Most of what I know did not come from a classroom. Although I did absorb a lot in high school, junior high, so forth. But the point is, yeah, there are all kinds of things that I will never be able to do or accomplish because I didn't go to college. And I knew those things I knew that would be the case. I wasn't stubborn. I wasn't saying, I'll show everybody it's wrong. I knew, for example, that certain clubs, jobs, whatever, that have it as a requirement, that I would never be able to do those things or be included in those things. But to me, it was worth it. You make a value judgment. And I've always, kind of like Groucho Marx, they said he wouldn't be a member of a club, any club that would actually have him as a member. Do you know what he meant by that? Some people don't understand what do you mean you wouldn't join? It's because if I have to conform to what a bunch of I wouldn't join the place. If somebody deigns me to be acceptable, screw them. I don't want to put myself up and have to be judged by a bunch of. That's what he meant by it. But there are no surprises. I mean, I haven't found something denied to me that I thought would be opened up to me, even though I didn't go to college. But I have zero complaints. But again, I'm not advocating this. Just like during the hurricanes, I'm not a meteorologist. Don't treat what I'm saying as gospel. And when it comes to education, everybody's different, and everybody has different interests. And I would never say don't go to college. I believe education is key. My worry is that we have so many people educated that haven't been taught anything. They're not taught to think anymore. Thinking is dangerous. Thinking you might come up with something other than what people want you to believe if you start thinking. There's so little critical thinking taught. I actually think that not going to college might have actually benefited my career in some ways. Who knows how college would have shaped me? Arguably, it wouldn't have, but you never know. You never know. Not that I would have become a raging commie bastard, but who knows what can happen. I didn't subject myself to that possibility. So I just think learning is the key. And however you can do that is what you should do. Because it's actually fun. And there's no substitute for knowledge. Because knowledge brings confidence, and there's no substitute for confidence. If you have confidence, don't care what it is, you'll be able to do much more. Confidence combined with desire. And, of course, where does confidence come? Confidence comes from achievement. And, I mean, genuine achievement. So I firmly believe in all of those things. I just don't believe there's only one way to get it all. And only one recipe that you can mass produce for everybody. Even when I was, folks, I'll tell you the truth, even when I was junior high, I didn't care about half the stuff they were trying to teach me. And I would go home, I said, this place, why don't they teach me things I want to know? I asked my dad. Why are they, I don't care about, son, it has been determined by professional educators that a well-rounded education is exactly what you're getting. I understood that, but at some point, don't I become an individual instead of some mass-produced sardine? I mean, if I'm showing an aptitude and a real interest in something, why can't I go get it? Why do I have to take all this stuff? Well, because this is what the university says you must take. You must take ballroom dance, and you must take... I flunked speech 3 times because I didn't outline them. I already knew how to do speeches. Anyway, yes, not having a college degree has resulted in certain doors not being open, but none of them are a surprise. And I don't regret it. I don't sit around and lament it. Back after this in their audience, and it's kind of cute. The NFL seriously concerned with empty stadiums. Just now, are they noticing that? I'm wondering. Sit tight, folks. Coming back, El Quico. Very, very close friend. He died of complications from prostate cancer way, way, way too early. His thriller novels are among the best of the genre. They're right up there with anybody's. They are page turners that you cannot put down, each one better than the next. And it was a goal, it was a dream of his to have his books converted into a movie series, much like Ian Fleming's James Bond. It was not thinking of that, but they've made some Clancy books into movies, and Vince's books are every bit as qualified to be converted to the big screen. So they worked on one of his novels called American Assassin, which is the novel that introduces and sets up the primary character, Mitch Rapp. And they finally got this done, and Vince isn't alive to see it, but his wife, Lisa, and the kids are. They had the premiere, the official premiere of the movie in Minneapolis, where Vince is from, last week. Just to give you an idea of how big he was in Minneapolis, his funeral was one of the major Catholic churches. There were over 1,200 people who showed up for Vince's funeral. He was beloved by everybody. He was very much involved in the community. His family, his brothers are police officers. He was a personal friend of George W. Bush. George W. Bush read Vince's novels, and Vince was a frequent visitor to the Oval Office. He was an iPad and iPhone aficionado. He's just a general all-round, thoroughly good guy, and he is terribly missed by everybody. And it's such a thrill for everybody who knew him and this is a major studio, CBS Films, a major studio has done this movie, and as I say, 7 years in the making. And this is the movie earlier this week that I was treated to a screening of. And, you're sitting there watching this, and you really want it to be great. Movies made from books can go any number of ways. A book that takes you a number of days to read, condense that down to a couple of hours. In a movie, they have to edit, they have to leave certain things out, and you never know. Vince wanted to be involved in writing the screenplay, wanted to be involved, and tried for 7 years, and people were deeply invested in the project. They finally got it done, and the movie premieres today. And I have to tell you, I was stunned at how good it was. I'm jaundiced on action movies and so forth. I think they're formulaic and predictable. They can still be entertaining. Don't miss. I'm not being arrogant about this. I'm not trying to be condescending at all about the genre, but it's just many of them are formulaic, and they have the required sex scenes here, the required action, the required car chase, the required this, and this is not that. It's got some of those elements because they are required, but a lot of effort was put into this, and it really, really is good. And one of the things that we're all concerned about, you read a book and you've got such a great protagonist as Mitch Rapp. I mean, the focal point. He's a special forces stud. So who are they going to go get? Vince was the guy. If you ever saw a picture of Vince, we'll get a picture of Vince and we'll put him at rushlimbaugh.com. Vince was Mitch Rapp. I mean, he would never tell you that. But in terms of appearance, the guy was just one of the greatest looking guys ever, and he could have been Mitch Rapp. You'd ask him, well, who do you model this character after, and who you model that character after? And he would give us some names now and then, but he kept that stuff close to the vest. And when it came to casting Mitch Rapp, I don't even remember the names that he thought would be good for the role. But they found a young actor who pulls it off. And I think it's you would expect me to say great things about the movie, but I would tell you if I thought it missed the mark, and I would tell you if I thought it was sophomoric, and I would tell you if I thought that it was predictable, and it's not. It was when the movie was over, I was unaware as much time had passed. It's a runtime of just short of 2 hours, an hour and 58 minutes. So I promised myself that I would give it a big push today. I don't know how many of you go to movies anymore. Hollywood's box office this summer has been in the tank. And there's been a lot of people wondering why and offering theories about it. And everybody has one. I've talked to actors that I know who think that the politicization of everything to do with Hollywood, including actors pontificating in public, is finally, just like the protests at the NFL, the disrespect of the flag, the national anthem, is having an impact. There are people who believe that finally the fact that you just don't want to be preached to by political people. You want to go to a movie and watch it. It's an escape, and they're making it hard to do. There isn't any politics in this. I mean, there's no political preaching here, and if that matters to you. But it's given that Hollywood's not having the greatest summer, everybody's hoping that there's an uptick, and I hope this is the movie that does it. If you do go see it, you're not going to be wasting whatever it costs and the time. You'll enjoy it, and when it's over, you'll hope they make another, which I think is probably the best thing I could say about it. You wish it didn't end, and you hope they do another, and I really do. American Assassin. I'm sure at a theater near you. Now, our blowtorch affiliate in St. Louis is the great KMOX, and we have not been carried today in St. Louis because Ferguson 2.0 might be happening. Here's the headline from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch newspaper. Ex-St. Louis police officer Jason Stockley found not guilty of murder. Former St. Louis police officer Jason Stockley, you may pronounce it Stokely, I'm not sure it's spelled with a CK, so in my education you pronounce that Stock, but people's name pronunciations are different, so I'm not clear that's how I pronounce it. Could be Stokely, but anyway, he was found not guilty today of murdering a man while on duty. Circuit Judge Timothy Wilson's highly anticipated verdict found a white former St. Louis police officer not guilty of a first-degree murder charge and armed criminal action in the December 2011 shooting death of a black drug suspect after a high-speed pursuit and crash. Activists with support from some of the city's black clergy have pledged disruptive protests ahead of Wilson's verdict. Some are claiming that Ferguson will look like Romper Room if the verdict here is not guilty, which it has been. The judge addressed such statements as those made by the black clergy in his order. A judge shall not be swayed by partisan interests, public clamor, or fear of criticism. The big judge was saying, I don't care what you're threatening to do. I don't care what you're threatening to do to the city. The law is the law, and I'm going to judge it accordingly. More than a month, it was a bench trial. There's no judge, no jury. More than a month has passed since the cops' bench trial ended, a case that has rekindled racial tensions not seen in St. Louis since the Ferguson uprising and the police killing of Von Derrick Myers Jr. in the second half of 2014. Ahead of the verdict and the threat of violent protests, and they are being made today as well, Governor Eric Greitens took steps to activate the National Guard. Police officers in St. Louis and St. Louis County were put on 12-hour shifts. Several St. Louis schools called off classes today. Barricades went up around downtown courthouses and the police station, and at least one downtown business boarded up its windows. Anybody who knew what they were talking about would never have made such a statement, said one of the people here, one of the protests to KMOX morning host. One of the mayor is Lyda Cruson. She released a statement following the verdict saying, I'm appalled at what happened to Anthony Lamar Smith. That's the black drug suspect. I am sobered by this outcome. Frustration, anger, hurt, pain, hope, and love all intermingle. I encourage St. Louisans to show each other compassion, to recognize that we all have different experiences and backgrounds, and that we all come to this with real feelings and experiences, said the mayor. Her comment drew a rebuke from the lawyer for the cop. Anybody who knew what they were talking about would never make such a statement. Made that statement on the morning show on KMOX in St. Louis. The cop is now 36, lives in Houston, was charged last year with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. It was the December 20th, 2011 shooting death the victim, again, Anthony Lamar Smith. The decision on whether drug trial or jury trial or bench trial was the judge's, because Stockley waived his right to a jury trial, the cop. So the judge said, okay, well, I'll do it myself. Prosecutors said that Stockley carried out a premeditated murder of the African-American drug suspect by shooting him 5 times at close range and then planting a .38 caliber revolver in his Buick after the police pulled Smith's body from the car. So the usual allegation, evidence was planted, and it was a predetermined murder based on race, is what has fired up the town. Prosecutors asserted that a kill shot was fired at close range after the first 4 shots were fired in close succession and struck the victim in the shoulder. But the defense lawyers said that the cop acted reasonably in self-defense, killing a drug suspect he believed was reaching for a hidden handgun. Tensions are high, and threats are being made to burn the town down and so forth. But that's the latest in St. Louis. If things have actually begun to happen, I haven't yet heard about them. But I wanted to make sure and mention it to it. That's why our station, the station St. Louis, has gone wall-to-wall covering this. Anyway, let's take a brief time out. We'll come back and resume. We got the NPR audio soundbite where they translate something I said for their liberal audience under the belief that liberals would not be able to understand. Well, Ben Shapiro got out of Berkeley alive and unharmed, and he's written a piece about it. He said 5 things that he learned. And the number one thing that he wrote in his column, the number one thing he learned is that when the cops do their job, the Antifa people don't matter. When the cops do their job, Antifa's not a problem. Bingo! Bingo! Hang in, folks. We're coming right back. Limbaugh program. How are you, sir?
Very well. Thank you, Rush. Hey, I got 3 things I'd like to talk to you about. One is personal, and the second is a comment about Monday night's football commentary.
Sure.
And then just a question.
Okay.
A couple of months ago, I was listening to your show when Scott Bio called in and invited you to come out to the West Coast and play around with him and his cronies. I so much wanted to be part of that foursome, but knew that there was no way. So I thought when I heard you were out here, I'd invite you down here to San Diego. So if you want to play, you want to come down, you're more than welcome.
Well, I appreciate it.
Hey, Monday night's football game.
Yeah.
Beth Myers, you were talking about the telecast. She was phenomenal. You know, aside from, ESPN's left-leaning outlook, she was really good. Play, she was perfect. And I grew up with, the best in the business, Chick Hearn and Vin Scully. So I think I know.
Well, if that's who you're comparing her to, she should be profoundly complimented. If you're comparing her to Chick Hearn and Vin Scully, it's a she. Watching on an iPad and not on a big TV in the room because I was smoking while watching a game, which means I had to be outside. And so I had my iPad out there, and there was all kinds of noise outside, people partying and the jackhammers. So I was just listening to reading closed captioning. I really didn't hear much of what when I did hear her, she sounded informed. She wasn't stuttering. She sounded confident. But I didn't hear enough to know. So I'm sure she'd be thrilled with your review.
She was exactly that. relatively,
what did you think of Rex Ryan?
What's out there? Pardon me?
What do you think of Rex Ryan?
Boy, not much. Now I'm being kind.
Well,
okay?
that kind of fits with the reviews. This is typical of sports broadcast. So here's Rex Ryan, a big bellicose, bombastic coach in the post-game press conference. Boy, this guy'd be great on TV. He'll say anything. Plus, he's got a toe suck fetish. And so they put him on TV. Well, he does. He admitted it in a post-game press conference. Anyway, he gives fans the finger when he's at other arenas watching events and so forth.
Yeah.
So they thought this could be great, it's different when there's a microphone and you've got 30 seconds and so forth. Maybe he'll get better, but your review is commensurate with what I saw elsewhere.
Okay, perfect. Lastly, I just wanted to know how your experience out here on the West Coast was or has been. I know you're in a bunker and not sure how insulated you are from the regular folk, but there's a lot of left lug nuts out here. I'm wondering if you've managed to change any minds or get them to look at things a little differently.
I'm gonna, since you ask it that way, I haven't encountered one opponent. I haven't encountered one enemy. Everybody I've run into has let it be known that they listen and that they enjoy, and they've just been as nice as they can be. Now when I play golf here at a couple different places, and there are some, as you can imagine, there are some leftists and so forth, but even they, while playing golf, smoking cigars, goes a long way to rapprochement. Even they'll have a little zinger or try a little jab here and there, but for the most part, they are perfectly fine too. I like it very much out here. I have a lot of friends out here. I haven't seen them this week because there hasn't been social this week, and some of them are not even here, and my time schedule has not met with theirs. And then we had the death of Don Ohlmeyer during the week, and that's a lot of mutual friends there too. So it's been kind of and then the hurricane back home, and wondering what's going on, power coming back, what damage this can. There's been a lot of distractions this week, but it does. I like it out here very, very much. If it weren't for the tax situation out here, there's plenty of people out here that I could have a not an oppositional existence each and every day. I lived in Sacramento from 1984 to 1987. I liked it there. I think California's a beautiful state. It's a shame that people who run it. But even with that, put that out of your mind as often as you can. And I always have a great time when I'm out here. I like being in the Pacific time zone. The toughest thing about the Pacific time zone is getting to bed by 11 o'clock. I go to bed at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And so to be on your schedule, I have to go to bed at 11 o'clock here. And that's just hard. I hate giving up on the day at 11 o'clock. Back in a moment. Hey, the people at Hillsdale College have a couple of things to look forward to this weekend. There's a football game. They actually have a football team at Hillsdale. People ask me that. Yeah, they do. And they've even had some players be drafted in the NFL. They've got a home game. They're already 2-0, and they don't play cupcakes. They're not like Ohio State. That one week will book, East Appalachian Junior College and beat them 73-0 in the sports world. Wow, did you see? They don't book cupcakes at Hillsdale. So they've got Saturday, that's football. Then Sunday, talk about a wide diversity. Sunday, Constitution Day. That's big at Hillsdale College. I'll tell you this. There's not a single graduate from Hillsdale that does not know every freedom in the First Amendment and the other 9 amendments in the Bill of Rights. There's not a single graduate or student at Hillsdale that cannot name the 3 branches of government. In case you missed it, 40% of Americans in a University of Pennsylvania study, 40% cannot name one of the freedoms in the First Amendment. and 37% do not know what the three branches of government are. At Hillsdale, it's 100% who do know. Constitution is a pillar. It's part of the foundation. At Hillsdale, you don't graduate, no matter what your major, you don't get out of there without becoming proficient in understanding the Constitution. The Sunday event, Constitution Day, really resonates on the campus. They may be the only college that celebrates the Constitution in a number of ways. They enjoy teaching and learning about it, its enduring qualities, profound effect on the world, so much so that they continue to offer free online courses to anybody that wants to learn. And I'll tell you, I don't care what you were taught about it. I'm pretty safe in saying, no matter how good your education is, if you do an online course provided by Hillsdale and the Constitution, you'll learn things that you didn't know and perspectives about it that you didn't know. The current online course offer is one of their most popular to date. It's Introduction to the Constitution. In the most entertaining and informative ways, it allows you to reacquaint yourself with how a document that's 236 years old can still be relevant to your day-to-day life. The brilliance of it, its elegance, the foresight that the authors had in designing it, our government, your freedoms. It's the only document of its kind in world. Well, Magna Carta would come close, but really it's the only document of its kind. And the online courses, it's a series of conversations and presentations done by Hillsdale faculty. And it's all free. It's right there on your computer. And there's 10 lectures. Take them, watch them whenever you want. It's all up to you. And as I say, free. There's a week or so left here in this particular course, Introduction to the Constitution. You can get it by signing up at rushforhillsdale.com. And then, as I say, watch it at your leisure. Rushforhillsdale.com. Okay, to NPR, last night, program All Things Considered, they had a politics correspondent named Don Gagne. He had a report about me and my take on Trump working with Chuck and Nancy. And it's essentially a translation of the talk radio king explaining to his audience what all happened in the DACA deal.
Supporters of President Trump often point to his reputation as a deal maker. But this possible bipartisan agreement on immigration isn't exactly what they had in mind. Here's how conservative talk radio king Rush Limbaugh put it on his show this afternoon.
So I wake up today and all hell is breaking loose.
He actually suggested that everybody slow down for a moment. He cited the president's tweets that the deal is not done and that there will be a wall. And Limbaugh said the media likes this story so much for one simple reason.
They want you to think Trump has sold you out and thrown you under the bus. They want you to think that Trump has given away his mandate in exchange for doing deals.
Don't jump to conclusions, he cautioned, though it's clear that a lot of Trump's supporters have done just that.
How smart do they think their own audience is? Supporters of President Trump. Anyway, it was a nice thing. I didn't mean to lead you to the conclusion that it was critical. It wasn't. It's just they needed to translate for their audience what I was saying. And you see, he was rather shocked. He actually suggested that everybody slow down for a minute. Who would have thought? Then this morning on CNN's Newsroom, co-host John Berman spoke with former Trump campaign communications advisor Jason Miller about Trump working with Chuck and Nancy on the DACA deal. John Berman said he's tweeted about like 6 different subjects this morning, Jason, and one of them is not DACA. This notion he's willing to reach some kind of deal that'll upset his base is still out there, so he throws all these other things out to his base to keep them happy.
A lot of folks are looking at what the president's doing as far as reaching out across the aisle and trying to find some kind of bipartisan agreement and saying, good job. I mean, heck, you even saw Rush Limbaugh praise the president for some of his outreach for doing this. He's also trying to put pressure on Republicans on Capitol Hill, knowing that if he doesn't put pressure on them now, they're going to wait this 6 months and then put something really terrible together at the end to try to shove in front of him, probably that doesn't have the border security measures that he really wants in there.
You know, the thing I think everybody's misunderstanding, if you're just joining us, I treated the audience here to some data today. There's a Morning Consult poll, and it's a stunner in the sense that it's like 67, almost 70% of Trump voters are all in on the DACA deal. Fine with them. Fine with them. And Trump dealing with Chuck and Nancy, fine with them, because they think Trump's a couple of moves ahead of everybody. And they think Trump is doing this to achieve something else. And one of those things, if they're right about that, I'm just telling one of the things, there's two possibilities here that people have suggested. One possibility is that Trump is reaching out to Chuck and Nancy and doing the Dreamer DACA deal as impeachment insurance, because over there is Mueller. And Mueller and the whole Democrat Party is waiting for Mueller to find something he can impeach, because that's what this investigation is. There is no Russian collusion. It's been so much time, they don't even have a shred of evidence. The Mueller investigation is about gathering data that can be used in impeachment proceedings. So the theory is, some people have, that Trump is actually engaging here in trying to put together impeachment insurance. I don't think there's such a thing. I think Trump could give Chuck and Nancy everything they want, and they'd still impeach him the first chance they got. But I think people who believe that the Trump base is about to blow through the roof here it's not reflected in the polling data. Like Steve King, the Iowa Congress, is a good guy. He was afraid. He was on TV yesterday saying, if Trump does this, that blows up his base, it's over. And that's not what the Morning Consult polling data shows at all. Only 20% of Trump's supporters think that. Now, that's a sizable chunk, but it's not blowing up the whole base. One more bite here. Fox special report with Brett Baer last night, all-star panel. Juan Williams of the Five was on there to talk about the Trump deal with Chuck and Nancy. And Brett Baer said, today you had Chuck Schumer talking about his new friend, the president. Nancy Pelosi said that Schumer talked New York to Donald Trump, that there's a certain New York lingo, and Schumer knows what it is. Trump understood it, and they're getting along great. Steve King, the Iowa congressman, said basically that the president risks blowing up his base at this point. When you think about that base, it's about 35-40%. You think about the high retention of Republican support for the president. If that starts to deteriorate, if you get the right-wing talk radio voices pulling away from this president, that could crater what is not a high level of support for him. There you have it. Juan Williams says if Trump loses talk radio, he'll lose his base. This is something that the media, the left, has been saying for 30 years, that if, fill-in-the-blank Republican loses talk radio, that's it. And then the next day, they'll say that talk radio, come on, it's just irrelevant. The guys are just a bunch of entertainers. You can't take them seriously. And then the day after that, talk radio becomes the titular head of the Republican Party. It's a day-to-day thing, and it's largely dependent on what the media hope, and they are almost always the wrong. Magic will They left a murder in the song. They didn't fade it out before. No, they couldn't. You can listen. If you listen, you'll hear it. There were people that believed it. It's the 1970s. I don't know, it's just strange things I remember. Dave in Buffalo, you're next on the EIB network. Hello, sir.
On Rush, thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
So, being here in wonderful New York, we have an awesome governor, Mr. Cuomo, who thinks it's a great idea to give everybody free college. So if you make under $125,000 a year, you are entitled to free college.
How long ago did he propose this? Because I have a vague memory of this.
This happened within the last 6 months, and it is a green light. It is good to go.
So what happens if you make $30,000 a year? You don't get free education, free college in New York.
No, you get free education. Anybody under $125,000 a year.
You said 125. Oh, I missed it. You said under 125,000.
Yep. Anybody that makes the annual household income, both mom and dad. If mom and dad make under $125,000,
here's the thing.
You get free education.
People will say, this is never going to happen. Don't, folks, you may think it'll never happen, but they're serious about it. And they want you to think they're serious about it. It's their solution to everything. Just give it away. It's tough to run against Santa Claus. And that's what they want people to believe that they are. Brian in San Antonio, you're next. Welcome to the EIB Network. Hello.
Thank you, Rush. It's an incredible honor to speak with you today.
Thank you, sir, very much.
I just want to say thank you, first of all, for you saved me from my liberal arts education when I went off to college. But I know we're under the gun, so I'm going to get to my point really quickly.
Okay.
If there is bipartisan support for dealing with the DACA folks, I think that he should say, okay, that's fine. We'll do something about them, but let's re-examine Section 1 of the 14th Amendment and maybe change birthright citizenship to something that has something to the effect of you need to have one parent that's an American citizen in order to be a birthright American citizen.
Yeah, that there's any number of things like that could be done. But what do you think about him not including funding for the wall in the demand?
Well, I think something like that could almost be considered a wall because it deals with anchor babies and chain migration. So I think it's kind of a constitutional wall as opposed to a literal wall.
I think it's a great point. Chain migration is the great hidden, very rarely commented upon thing that causes practically a geometric expansion of the numbers. And I'm going to repeat it for the third time. Mickey Kaus, and something that I didn't know and I didn't even consider. And when I read it, it really it's a great point. There's not a single country. And the reason why this is important is because everybody that we know, well, not everybody, but a lot of people say they're kids. We're not going to round up a bunch of kids and send them. I myself said it. We're not going to round up a bunch of kids. Mickey Kaus, libertarian, let's say, journalist. He's been written for liberal publications in his life. But his observation was there's not a single country in the world that allows what we're getting ready to do here. There's not a single country in the world that permits illegal alien children to stay and become citizens. Because if they did, that would be the end of it. If the magic is simply get your kid across the border and no country will throw your kid out, then that's the end of borders, essentially. He said that's why not a country in the world does it, including us. And this would, Obama already did it with the DREAM Act and the deferred action against childhood arrivals or whatever. And it's just that one little statement is